Hello, my name is Matthias and welcome to my Gameweek 32 free hit guide where I'll be taking a look at some of the most popular players to choose from in Gameweek 32, especially if you're on a free hit and you can change your whole team around. These are the players that I recommend you getting. I'll be taking a look at some template players at first, like the squad you can see right before you now is some of the more picked players this game week that I've seen across FPL Reddit, FPL Twitter, and content creators in general. A lot of these players are featured. So yeah, I'm just going to talk about them first. And then after that, I'm going to talk a bit about some differential picks. And then finally, I'm going to pick a team with sort of like a mix and match. Some template players, some differential picks. So yeah, let's just go straight ahead with the sort of template 15-man squad that seems to be the most popular at the moment in FPL for the Gameweek 32 free hit. And starting in goal, we have Johnston for Crystal Palace. Starting goalkeeper for Crystal Palace with Guaita out, and they have a really good fixture against Everton at home. There are not that many good defensive fixtures in this game week, so getting a player from a team that might still have a lot of saves, because I think Everton will have a lot of shots, but Everton are also kind of wasteful and shoot straight at the goalkeeper sometimes. So I think Johnston can rack up some saves, he can get some bonus points, and he's playing for a really good team at the moment, Crystal Palace, against a really poor team at the moment, Everton. So I think he makes a lot of sense. Everson, just a placeholder, 3.8, the cheapest possible goalkeeper. I know some people have a different goalkeeper as their backup, and he's going to be talked about in the differential team, but we'll get to that later. Trent Alexander-Arnold seems like a given. He's playing in a sort of different role now for Liverpool, sort of like Man City's type of system Klopp has adopted for Liverpool, with the fullbacks, or at least one of the fullbacks coming into midfield, and that is perfect for Trent Alexander-Arnold. A lot of people have been talking about how he's more of a midfielder than a fullback, but with this new system, he doesn't have to defend that much, but he can still be the creative force going forward, and we've seen that as well, getting the assists. You got 2 assists even in yesterday's game, so Trent Alexander-Arnold is a really good pick at the moment, and he is, as template as they come, he's probably the most nailed defender out of anyone, because the rest of the defenders aren't that good. I mean, we have Trippier straight away, who's a staple in FPL this season, and he's still a good pick, even though they have Tottenham at home. It's not the best fixture, that's why he's sort of like not as nailed as Trent Alexander-Arnold, but he sort of serves the same role, has a lot of potential assists in him. Not that many goals, I guess a free kick here and there, sometimes he can score, but he creates a lot of chances, so bonus points, assists, potentially even clean sheets, playing for the best defense in the league still. We gotta say that, even though they lost 3-0 against Aston Villa last time, but I think that's more down to the fact that Aston Villa are really good than Newcastle being really bad. So speaking of Aston Villa, the next 2 players are Aston Villa defenders, and only one of them will be starting, and that is Alex Moreno, who is the more attacking out of the 2. He's more attacking than the Mings. He is quite a lot in the box of the opposition, so he might get some attacking returns, because they do, just like Newcastle, they don't have the best fixture. They have Brentford away, which seems like a fixture they will concede in, but Moreno, really good going forward, and as you can see, there are no more space for any Liverpool or Arsenal defenders in this team, because we're using all of that, those spots, Liverpool and Arsenal, in attack. So that's why we got to settle with someone not as good. The third defensive spot is probably what's going to be the most different from most teams, but I've seen Alex Moreno in a lot of squads, whether he's on the bench or if he's starting. He's a really good option. And Mings the same. Not the same attacking output, I guess, but Mings has also shown that he can come up for a corner and get a goal or assist. So Mings has been amazing. He's also a bonus magnet as well, so Mings has been really good. Finally, Totti, just like Everson, more like a placeholder, the cheapest possible defender. They're pretty much on your bench. You don't really need them, so don't really need to talk more about them either. Moving on, Mohamed Salah, he seems to be back to his best for Liverpool. Scored twice yesterday against Leeds, or yesterday in my time at least, because I'm recording this on Tuesday. But yeah, Salah just looks essential. Even if you don't have a free hit, it seems like he's like the main guy to get currently. So yeah, I think whether you are free hitting or not, I think Salah is the priority transfer this week. So yeah, he's just looking amazing. They have Nottingham Forest at home, a super simple fixture. So Salah is just nailed on. He should be in every single free hit team probably. And likewise, Martinelli, he's also in quite a lot of teams, but he's not quite as good as Salah in terms of FPL like potential. We know Salah has a higher ceiling than Martinelli, and we also know that he's also more nailed on as the starter for Liverpool, especially considering Liverpool just destroyed Leeds 6-1, and Arsenal had another disappointing draw. So that is what makes me slightly worried about Martinelli's place in this team, but I doubted Martinelli's place in the team too many times this season, and I'm probably not going to make the same mistake again, especially considering he's such a template pick as well. I think it's hard to go without him, because if he starts, which is still most likely because Arteta doesn't really rotate his squad that much, considering if he starts, he's going to be probably the best asset from Arsenal. So yeah, I think Martinelli makes a lot of sense to have as your template midfielder next to Salah. A lot of people will have that as well. Saka is more 50-50. He's been on sort of a decline since his big 18-point haul against Crystal Palace a couple weeks ago. He's just blanked every single game week. The 2 game weeks before the Crystal Palace match and the several game weeks after, he's blanked, culminating in a penalty miss against West Ham. But I think that's sort of what makes it a bit dangerous, the fact that he missed the penalty and he really wants to avenge himself and show his worth. He might have cost Arsenal the title with that penalty miss, so I think he's going to try to make it up, make up for it. Make it up for himself with some goals against Southampton. I think he'll be raring to go. The thing with Saka is he's sort of like isolated on the wings. Sometimes he kind of just drifts in and out of games. He doesn't really force himself into games, and I think he might be able to, or might try to do that now since he missed the penalty. And I think it's kind of dangerous to go without Saka, but the greatest argument against against having Saka is that if you don't have him, you can have an Arsenal defender. So having someone like Ben White or Gabriel Magalhaes, who I'm going to talk about in the differential team, that might be the third defender that you're looking for. So that's the only thing with Saka. You can also talk about that with Jesus, but we'll get to Jesus pretty soon as well. Then Eberechi Eze scored 2 really nice goals. Crystal Palace are in great form, and they have potentially the easiest fixture against Everton at home. Everton have been pretty terrible, both home and away lately, and yeah, it seems like that's a game that Crystal Palace should win quite easily, but you never know with Everton. But still, Eze has looked amazing lately. His second goal in the last game was terrific against Southampton, and yeah, he's just such a fun player to watch as well. So I think a lot of people will look to go for him. If they don't go for him, they might go with Andreas. He's on the bench in this sort of template squad, but you could easily start him ahead of Eze as well, because they play Leeds at home, and Leeds have been the worst defense by far lately. And Andreas is the main man for Fulham now. He's on penalties with Mitrovic out, and he's playing centrally where Leeds concede a lot of their chances. So Andreas is also a great pick. Only thing with Andreas, they just played against Everton. They won 3-1, and Andreas Pereira, he didn't have a single goal return. So that's my only worry with him. Like, he's not a superstar in that way, and you never know with Andreas. But yeah, that's why I'm sort of not as sold on him, but he's still a good option, and especially on your bench, if for some reason one of your other players don't play, he's going to be first bench and come in and probably be a decent option. So I think Andreas is good as well. As far as the strikers go, there are 2 main picks that are pretty much in every squad, or at least one of them is, and that is Ollie Watkins, fresh off a huge performance with 16 points. 2 goals and 1 assist for Watkins, and several chances as well, and a disallowed goal as well. So Watkins just looks like someone you have to get. He has point returns in 11 out of the last 12 game weeks. Just been on an amazing run for Aston Villa, who are in the form of their lives. So Watkins seems amazing as well. Jesus, another great pick. He's been starting for Arsenal lately and scoring goals for Arsenal lately as well. He gets so many chances, so he seems like such a high upside pick. Like in Gameweek 2 when he got 19 points against Leicester, he could do that against Southampton as well. So he seems really good. It's just a matter of Saka versus Jesus, or if you want to triple up with Saka, Jesus, and Martinelli. But yeah, you can also bench Jesus. I mean, if Arteta would make changes, considering they have 2 kind of disappointing draws in a row now, the most likely person to come into the squad is Trossard, and that leaves out either Martinelli or Jesus probably as the guys that might have to make way for him. So in that way, I guess Saka is better than Jesus, but I think Jesus has shown to be more explosive, or better at least lately than Saka has. So yeah, you got to weigh up the Saka versus Jesus versus Ben White thing. That's that's going to be a huge thing, I think. But I think most people will lean towards having the triple up in Arsenal attack, so that's why it's the template team. And finally, Diogo Jota also forced his way into this team after a really good performance against Leeds. He looked amazing. It seems like he's the starting striker for Liverpool, and he has been really the last few years. He's been like the main striker for Liverpool, even ahead of Firmino, even ahead of Mane at certain points as well when Mane was there. And I think he's just a better player in general than Darwin Núñez. So I think Jota is amazing, and I have good experiences with Jota as well in FPL. And just in general, I'm a huge fan of his, so I think he's a really strong option. I mean, he's not as template. There's a lot of good forwards to choose from, and as you'll see in the second team, there are 3 forwards, even 4 or 5 forwards more than these 3 that are in contention for a spot in your team. So yeah, but currently Jota seems like the best third Liverpool asset as well. But we'll talk about some more Liverpool assets in the differential team, as we'll see here. We have 2 defensive options for Liverpool and a midfield option for Liverpool as well. That we'll get to. I mentioned earlier that there's usually a different backup goalkeeper than Iversen, and that's usually Martinez. He seems like the second favorite goalkeeper behind Johnston, and for good reason. Like I said, with Aston Villa, they're really good defensively, so he's really good. And Martinez, he has such X factor for a goalkeeper that you never know. He could save a penalty from Ivan Toney, which would be kind of amazing. And yeah, he can get a lot of saves as well. So Martinez is a really fun goalkeeper to have. Just gonna mention one more, and that is Neto for Bournemouth. I think he's been really good this season. I think he, among several other Bournemouth players, he's been pretty underrated. I think he's been one of the better goalkeepers, at least in the bottom half of the table. So I think he's also a decent option, but I don't know. He's kind of third to Martinez and Johnston, I feel like, if you want to go with one of those guys. And then in defense, we have 2 Liverpool defenders, Robertson and Van Dijk. There's sort of a discussion going on now if Robertson or Van Dijk is the best option, because with the new system, it seems like Robertson is playing more like a left centre-back sort of guy. He's staying more behind, but at the same time, we've seen him against Arsenal going far up the pitch and having a decent shot off target, sadly for him, but he had a decent shooting chance against Arsenal, and then against Leeds as well. And for one of the goals, he went far up the pitch and crossed it for Cody Gakpo, who passed it on to Salah. So he's shown that he can still be attacking. So I think he's still a good attacking threat for Liverpool. But if he's playing as a centre-back, like a left centre-back, de facto centre-back for Liverpool, then Van Dijk is probably the better option because he has more of a goal threat in terms of set pieces. I mean, Robertson takes on set pieces sometimes, but Trent Alexander-Arnold takes a lot of them as well. But Van Dijk can score from a header. He actually had an assist disallowed as well against Leeds. So he's decent in that respect. But yeah, if you want to go with a third Liverpool or like a second Liverpool defender next to Trent Alexander-Arnold, then Robertson and Van Dijk, you got to just pick between them, I guess. It depends if you have enough money. The money might be a difference. There's 0.3 between them, I think. Robertson is slightly more expensive, but I think it's pretty 50-50 whether you want to go with Robertson or Van Dijk. So yeah, Van Dijk has shown that he's been pretty good. Previously, he had, I think, when most of us wildcarded in Gameweek 26, I think he had a huge score. So maybe he'll do that again. I don't know. I just there's something with centre backs and scoring headers for free hits and wildcards that I kind of like. So I think I'd lean towards Van Dijk rather than Robertson currently, but I'm a pretty huge fan of Robertson in terms of FPL. So I don't know. It's sort of 50-50, but I'm probably going to stay away from double Liverpool defense, but we'll see. Ben White, like I mentioned, he might be the third Arsenal option for you next to Martinelli and either Saka or Jesus if you want to choose between them. Ben White, he's just been really amazing going forward lately. He's sort of been like a Dani Alves type of player, getting assists and goals pretty much every game week. They haven't gotten that many clean sheets, but against Southampton at home, there's really no better option than Southampton if you want to get a clean sheet. So I think White might be underrated pick in terms of the free hit team. So yeah, Perisic, not hugely a fan of Spurs defensively, but Perisic has shown that he's getting far up the pitch. So if they could luck out and get a clean sheet against Newcastle, who knows? It would be typical Spurs for some reason to do that. And if he can get a clean sheet and get an assist or something, then all of a sudden he has a pretty huge score. So I think Perisic, just for his attacking potential, is someone worth mentioning. But other than that, not really much to talk about with him. And then finally, Kurt Zouma. Like I said, there's something about centre-backs and free hits that I kind of like. Kurt Zouma is probably the most likely to score. He scored in the reverse fixture against Bournemouth when he got 15 points, so why not do it again? I guess he could do. but he's also just a bench option as well. But yeah, to be honest, this team is more like just 15 players rather than like a squad of players that I have planned to play, because I don't think you should go with a full free hit team. I think it's more likely you go with a template team than a full differential team, but I'm just going to show you 15 options there. So one of those options is Heung-min Son. I don't have Kane listed. That's one of the other forwards I talked about. There are pretty much 8 good attacking options, I feel like. So the 3 template picks that I showed you earlier, these 3 picks, as you can see on the screen, Solanke, Isak, and Iheanacho, and then you also have Ivan Toney, and you have Harry Kane as well. But rather than going with Kane, I've gone with Heung-min Son, who seems like the more informed player at the moment, and he's more fun to watch as well, and I think he can create more out of nothing. And I think against Newcastle, they won't be getting that big chances that Kane usually has to score. It probably is more from like a run from the side of the box and a shot up in the top corner like Son usually does. So that's why I sort of prefer Son over Kane. Still, he's kind of an interesting pick, but Spurs against Newcastle, it's hard to predict what Spurs will do. They haven't looked the best lately, so who knows? But they keep scoring goals, so that might be making the case for why you need Son in your team. But Maddison as well, he has a much easier fixture, Wolverhampton at home, and he looked a lot better against City now with Dean Smith as a manager. So I think Maddison is a really good pick. Yeah, he's always been really good when Leicester have been good. Maddison is the one that gets a lot of the points, so I think him against Wolverhampton at home is a really good option. Then we have Jerry Bowen. West Ham have been disappointing. Bowen has been disappointing in his own right after getting more than 200 points last season, where he was amazing. Struggled a bit more this season. He's missed a couple more chances, and West Ham haven't been nearly as good as they were last season. But if they could show up against Bournemouth, because West Ham have been sort of decent. Like, they got a draw against Arsenal, and they beat both Fulham and Southampton not too long ago as well, the last few game weeks. So if they could turn up against Bournemouth and win that match, Bowen is most likely the one to score for them, because he is the most nailed attacker. I mean, you could go with Benrahma as well, who's on penalties, but Benrahma and Moyes, they don't really go that well together, and Moyes might drop him for some reason. So I think Bowen is more of a safe pick, especially considering you don't really need to think that much about money in this team as you would long term if you'd have to go with either Benrahma or Bowen. I'd probably go with Benrahma just for the upside and the price, but for just one game week only, I think Bowen is the better choice, even though he's not as good away as he is at home. The next one, we have Cody Gakpo, just another Liverpool potential asset to have. He also looked amazing for Liverpool against Leeds, and it seems like he's going to keep his place now. I think Liverpool will start with the same players up front. I don't think they'll play with... I think Luis Diaz, Firmino, and Darwin Núñez will just stay on the bench for next game, considering how good they looked offensively last time. So I think Gakpo is going to be pretty safe, along with Jota and Salah as the front 3. And Gakpo looked really good. He's in really central positions, even though he's a midfielder. He quite often plays as sort of like the striker. They kind of rotate who plays as the striker in that system, but Gakpo is quite often in the middle of the park getting huge chances. So against Nottingham Forest at home, one of the easier matches that exists, because Forest are pretty terrible away. Gakpo seems like another great option as well. So you can even triple up with Gakpo, and you can't. You have to choose either Gakpo or Jota, because you need Salah and you need Trent Alexander-Arnold. So yeah, that's another conundrum for you with Liverpool, if you want to go with another defender or if you want to go with Gakpo or Jota. But it depends if you like any other midfielders or like any other strikers, I guess. And then finally, we have in midfield, we have Martin Ødegaard. He's the final like sort of Arsenal pick. He is still kind of nailed, and he scored last time against West Ham. So I think he's a decent option, actually. It's not the worst, but I think both Saka and Martinelli have been... Saka is on pens and Martinelli is slightly more explosive than Ødegaard. So that's why I think I prefer them over Ødegaard. But Ødegaard is still a decent player in his own right. And yeah, he might be... If you're really fearful of Martinelli not playing, then maybe Ødegaard is the better alternative for you. But other than that, I think the other Arsenal player assets are better. And especially for a free hit, I want to go with someone kind of more explosive. So... Solanke might be one of those explosive players. He got 2 assists and a goal last time for Bournemouth when they beat Spurs, and he's been looking really good lately. Solanke has been having kind of a weird FPL season where he's been sort of anonymous for most of the season, but in the parts where FPL managers have considered bringing him in, he's turned up for some reason. It's kind of weird. So previously, back in like Gameweek 8, when a lot of people needed like a cheap striker to be their third striker, Solanke stepped up and had a lot of huge performances in FPL. And now lately as well, he's been showing up and getting a lot of points. So West Ham at home, Bournemouth strikers have done pretty well against West Ham at home previously. I know Callum Wilson scored a lot of goals for Bournemouth against West Ham, but he doesn't play there anymore. It's Solanke who's the main man, and he's a really good option. So, but speaking of Wilson, he is kind of why I'm not as sold on Isak as I should be, because they just lost 3-0 against Aston Villa, so I fear that Isak will be benched for Wilson, and that's why I'm sort of not as 100% confident in Isak as I normally would be, because I know Spurs conceded a lot of goals, and I think if Isak starts and play 90 minutes, he's going to score 1 or 2 goals for sure. So if Isak is named, if for some reason Wilson is sick or something, he doesn't get to play, then I think Isak is straight into my team. But because of that slight worry that he's going to be benched, I don't quite like him as much, but he's just such an amazing player, and Spurs are leaky defensively, so that's why you should consider him as well. And then finally, we have Kelechi Iheanacho. He got to play the second half against Man City, and Leicester looked a lot better with him. I think it's pretty obvious that he's the best striker option that they have. Vardy is past it. Patson Daka, sort of not as influential as Iheanacho. He can't really link up as well with Maddison as Iheanacho does. So I think he's also a great option, especially if you don't have that much money left. I guess Solanke is the more safe option out of the two, but I think Iheanacho has high potential. As we saw, he had 2 huge hauls back-to-back against, I think it was Aston Villa and Spurs. Really difficult matches that they won both, I think, Leicester, not too long ago, right before this horrible stretch of games, where Iheanacho missed a lot of shots against Southampton. That was the start of the end for Brendan Rodgers. And then with the interim manager, he didn't really get the chance to play at all. So now with Dean Smith, he looks a lot better, and that's why I think he's a good option. This video is dragging on a bit, so I promised you to have like a mixture team, so I'm just going to show it to you. I'm not going to talk much about it, but here it is. This is sort of like a mixture between both of them. So it's basically, as you can see, we have 6 like main template players, and that is Trent Alexander-Arnold, Kieran Trippier, Mohamed Salah, Gabriel Martinelli, Ollie Watkins, and Gabriel Jesus. Those guys I feel like are kinda nailed. I mean, some more than others. It seems like Trent, Salah, and Watkins are, and Martinelli for that matter, are like 100% nailed. Trippier, just for the lack of options, seems like a good option, and then Jesus also seems like a really popular option, considering if he starts. I think if he's nailed on to start, then he's also nailed on to be in your free hit team for the most part. But yeah, I have Son and Maddison in this team, Andreas on the bench, Totti and Moreno on the bench as well. Ben White, gone with the Arsenal defensive option because I feel like he's a really good option. I think he could get a clean sheet, and I think he could get some goal returns as well. So that's why I sort of lean towards that, because Saka's in such terrible form. So that's what I've ended up with this team currently. It might be what I go with personally, but I'm not 100% sure yet. I'm going to have a team selection video coming up later on in this week, where you'll get to see my final team probably. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Subscribe to the channel and like the video if you found this informative. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye.